The night air was thick with tension as Aaron Hernandez, the once revered NFL star, drove a black SUV into a desolate industrial park in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Sitting in the back seat was Odin Lloyd, a semi-professional football player and friend, who must have sensed that this ride was anything but ordinary. Minutes later, in the dark isolation of the park, gunshots shattered the silence, leaving Lloyd's lifeless body sprawled on the gravel, a chilling end to what seemed an ordinary friendship. As news broke, the world was stunned. How could someone who had everything, a multi-million-dollar contract, fame, a family, throw it all away in such a brutal act?
Into Tuesday night, police with metal detectors combed through the area where a body was found Monday evening. A body that is now at the center of an investigation that has taken quite a turn, leading police to the home of New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez not far away. The body was discovered in a pathway behind the Corliss Landing business complex in North Attleboro.
And so this guy was jogging, and he found a body. And he came over here and knocked on the door and said, "Would you please call 911?" So that's what we did.
A business owner who did not want to be identified told NBC 10 he went with the teenager who made the gruesome find to take a look at the body. His description?
He was African-American, male, probably 25 to 35.
Authorities are not yet releasing the victim's name, but he was reportedly from Boston. Investigators were at the scene all day looking for clues. All of it a surprise to those who regularly jog through the area.
Yesterday, and I was cutting home through here, and I saw all the activity, but I wasn't sure, what it was from. And then she texted me this morning and said they found a body right where we were going to run yesterday. So it was scary.
But for those who looked deeper, the murder was just the tip of the iceberg. This was the culmination of years of unchecked anger, paranoia, and violence. Hernandez, who had been celebrated for his prowess on the field, harbored dark secrets, bar fights, suspected shootings, and ties to a lifestyle far removed from the glitz of professional sports. This is the story of how red flags and hidden struggles led to an irreversible tragedy, revealing a life derailed by trauma, fame, and the toxic culture that allowed it to fester. Join us as we trace the path that transformed a star athlete into a convicted murderer, leaving behind questions that still haunt those who watched his rise and fall. Born in Bristol, Connecticut, Aaron Hernandez's early life was marked by both adulation and hardship. His father, Dennis Hernandez, was a former athlete known for his intense and sometimes violent parenting style, while Dennis pushed Aaron and his older brother Jonathan towards success with strict discipline and a fierce work ethic. The emotional toll was profound. Reports from those who knew the family highlighted a household filled with pressure and expectations, where failure was not an option. Dennis's sudden death from complications related to hernia surgery when Aaron was just 16 years old created a significant emotional void, triggering a period of rebellion, grief, and erratic behavior that would set the stage for future turmoil. In the wake of his father's passing, Aaron's behavior became notably more volatile. Former classmates recalled instances of sudden temper flares and physical confrontations. Teachers described him as a charming and highly capable but noted moments when he appeared disconnected, easily provoked, and on edge. Friends mentioned that Aaron began associating with a different crowd, one that led him into risky behavior. His desire to maintain a tough exterior seemed to mask deeper insecurities and unresolved trauma from his father's sudden death. Despite these signs, Hernandez's exceptional athletic talent won him opportunities that deflected the attention from his personal struggles. His high school football performances were nothing short of impressive, drawing the attention of major colleges and recruiters.
His first year, he wasn't very good. He had a couple stingers and shoulder injuries and didn't play much. And then 2008, the national championship year, he was one of the best players I've ever coached. He's one of the most brilliant players. You could line him up anywhere and very little practice to get him to do some of the things he did. He was an extremely intelligent player. He was a guy that you would go into the game saying, he's one of the best players in America, get him the ball. He was ridiculous. He was the best tight end in America. He was that good. That's saying a lot in a 31-year career, saying I've never seen one like him. Football meant everything to him. He was very committed to it. His focus was on point, loved the game.
However, this attention fueled his dual identity. the disciplined athlete who thrived on the field, and the troubled young man wrestling with inner demons. Even at the University of Florida, reports of altercations and questionable behavior followed him. One notable incident in 2007 involved a bar fight where Hernandez, then just 17, allegedly struck a manager, leaving the individual with a burst eardrum. Although this should have raised significant concerns, it was handled quietly by the team, showcasing a pattern where warning signs were minimized in the face of an athlete's success. Hernandez's high school years were also marked by contradictions. While some teachers saw a bright, dedicated student, others observed troubling signs that pointed at deeper issues. Moments of anger, sharp mood swings, and minor outbursts suggested an underlying problem that required intervention.
With some of his ex-Patriots teammates, and one of his old teammates, Odin Lloyd, a former Patriots receiver, said that he would have mood swings. He said he would be either in a fit of rage or he'd be the most sensitive person in the room talking about cuddling with his mother, or he would say, "Do you think I'm good enough to play?"
The grief from losing his father at the formative age compounded these behavior issues, creating a boy who was at times fiercely determined and at other times dangerously unpredictable. Friends from his teenage years remembered seeing a shift in his demeanor. The vibrant, determined boy now carried an age of unpredictability and a reluctance to show vulnerability. At home, Aaron's mother struggled to maintain stability. His relationship with her became strained, especially after it emerged that she had started a relationship with his cousin's husband shortly after Dennis's death. This betrayal further contributed to Aaron's growing sense of isolation. Jonathan Hernandez, Aaron's brother, later revealed in interviews that their childhood was laced with trauma, physical discipline, and emotional wounds that lingered well into adulthood.
I think within our household it was extremely difficult to approach our mother and father with things that we were experiencing because of their narrow-mindedness and just, you know, their set ways. And it's almost like sometimes you back away from communicating because not only are you worried about how they're going to take something, but you're worried about the message that's going to come from their mouth and the tone and the way that it's directed at you, which can cause anyone to really keep things in and really question whether or not you feel safe presenting information that you're struggling to understand or overcome within yourself.
If Aaron had gone to your father and said, "I have conflicted thoughts on my sexuality,"
Yeah.
what would your father have said?
I don't know if he would have been able to finish his sentence. Yeah, I don't at all. I really don't. I think I can't imagine him even being able to, or my dad would have thought he could beat that out of him.
The accumulation of these factors, the demanding father figure, sudden grief, a troubled relationship with his mother, and early exposure to violence and betrayal, created a perfect storm that shaped Aaron's view of the world. He learned to channel his emotions on the football field, where aggression was celebrated and controlled chaos became a way of life. Yet, this outlet was only temporary. Off the field, his inner turmoil remained unaddressed, manifesting in behaviors that would escalate as he aged. The patterns seen in his high school and college years were early indicators of deeper psychological issues that, if intervened upon, might have altered his trajectory. The warning signs were there: temper issues, erratic behavior, and shift in his social circles, but they were often masked by the accolades he received. Coaches, teammates, and school officials largely overlooked these red flags, either unable or unwilling to confront the underlying issues in a system that prioritized athletic achievement over personal well-being. This set a precedent that followed Hernandez into adulthood, where the line between star athlete and troubled individual became increasingly blurred. Hernandez's transition to New England Patriots in 2010 marked the beginning of his professional ascent, but also brought signs that were ignored or downplayed.
I really think it's going to come, and when it happens, and you know there's a good chance you're set for life as long as you handle it the right way. It's an honor, and it seemed so surreal. Like, is it really true? I have a lot more to give back, and all I could do is play my heart out for them, make the right decisions, and live like a Patriot.
Coaches and teammates noted Hernandez's unpredictable behavior, but his exceptional performance on the field overshadowed his personal instability. His quick rise to prominence and the trust placed in him by the Patriots organization set the stage for what would become a tragic unraveling. Teammates spoke of an individual who oscillated between charismatic camaraderie and intense paranoia. Hernandez's installation of elaborate home security systems and his constant need to carry a gun hinted at a mind troubled by fear and mistrust. These were more than just quacks. They were manifestations of deeper psychological issues that would later be attributed to chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Despite these indications, the Patriots signed him to a $40 million contract extension in 2012, reflecting their investment in his talent over potential concerns.
I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm happy. You see him smiling.
Talk about the experience. Being a father for the first time, you spoke when you got the contract about your life changing. Is this another one of those?
Definitely a life changer.
The culture within the NFL at the time was fiercely competitive and at times neglectful of mental health. Teammates recalled Hernandez's reluctance to seek help or open up about his struggles. Despite these indications, the Patriots signed him to a $40 million contract extension in 2012, reflecting their investment in his talent over potential concerns. The culture within the NFL at the time was fiercely competitive and at times neglectful of mental health. Teammates recalled Hernandez's reluctance to seek help or open up about his struggles, reinforcing a damaging narrative that vulnerability was incompatible with success. Reports suggest that while team officials were aware of his issues, there was little intervention aimed at understanding or addressing them. Hernandez's actions off the field became increasingly erratic. There were rumors of altercations at clubs, connections with individuals involved in criminal activity, and a growing tendency for isolation. His paranoia reached a level where he fortified his home, complete with surveillance cameras, reinforced doors. While these were clear signs of psychological distress, they were largely overlooked and dismissed as eccentricities of a high-profile athlete. Prosecutors presented a compelling case emphasizing premeditation. Phone records, CCTV footage, and text messages pointed to a deliberate plan. Lloyd texted his sister minutes before he was killed, signaling his awareness of potential danger by stating, "Did you see who I am with? NFL, just so you know." Shell casing found at the crime scene matched those from a weapon owned by Hernandez, and surveillance videos from his home later depicted him returning visibly tense, holding what appeared to be a firearm. In the aftermath of Lloyd's murder, Hernandez's behavior oscillated between outward calm and flashes of tension. Associates recalled that his reactions were chillingly composed, reflecting a man accustomed to suppressing emotion. Yet his movements captured on surveillance cameras that night revealed a restless and unsettled state. The investigation opened a Pandora's box into Hernandez's past, revealing a pattern of violence. A major discovery was his involvement in the 2012 double homicide of Daniel DeBrew and Safiro Furtado in Boston.
It honestly blows my mind that there was an NFL player that killed multiple people while actively playing in the NFL and making millions of dollars and playing in front of thousands of fans. Just a few months after the Patriots lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl in 2012, two men were shot leaving a club. According to witnesses, these two men bumped into NFL star Aaron Hernandez, literally bumped into him and spilled some of their drink on him. And he took this so personally. Let me add, Aaron Hernandez was acquitted for this, but I feel like in order for everything else to make sense, then this had to have been true. Because after this, he shot and partially blinded his friend Alexander Bradley, person who said he was driving when Aaron committed the double homicide.
These men were shot after a seemingly trivial dispute at a nightclub, sparked by Hernandez feeling disrespected. Testimony from Alexander Bradley, Hernandez's former close associate, indicated that Hernandez had been the shooter. Driven by sudden rage, Bradley himself was not immune to Hernandez's violence. In February 2013, Hernandez allegedly shot him in the face, fearing Bradley might talk to authorities. Bradley survived but lost an eye, and his testimony later exposed Hernandez's impulsive and brutal tendencies.
Yesterday you told the ladies and gentlemen of the jury that when the whole spilled drink thing happened, you were the peacemaker, right?
I didn't use the phrase peacemaker.
You weren't there for that, right?
That's better.
Okay. And you didn't want to get in trouble, right?
Correct.
And You didn't go out for any trouble.
Correct.
Okay? And you care about Aaron.
Correct.
You don't want to see him get in any trouble.
Correct again.
Okay? And
Hernandez's violent streak was not confined to these headlines making crimes. During his college years at the University of Florida, he was implicated in 2007 bar fight where he punched a manager hard enough to cause a ruptured eardrum. This incident was handled quietly by the university, a pattern of leniency that persisted throughout his career. There are also rumors of threats and altercations within the Patriots organization. Though these were often downplayed or not publicly addressed, Hernandez's need to maintain control, coupled with paranoia, drove him to fortify his home with advanced surveillance systems and keep firearms close at hand. Friend and former teammates described Hernandez's behavior as a blend of charm and menace. While he could be friendly and engaging, he was equally capable of sudden aggression. The double life he led, from the devoted athlete and family man to someone capable of cold-blooded violence, created a complex, contradictory persona.
Aaron, tell me, did you do this? Because if you did, I know you must have had some good reason. I'm going to get you the best defense lawyer we can get, and I'll do it at my cost. And he looked me right in the eye, not blinking anything, and said, Mr. Kraft, I didn't do that. And when he said it, I believed him.
Hernandez's involvement in Lloyd's murder and the subsequent revelations about the Boston double homicide were part of a larger pattern. Associates recalled his volatile temper and capacity for retaliation over perceived slights. These behaviors aligned with the pressures and culture of high-profile sports, where aggression was often valorized and mental health issues went largely unaddressed. The investigation surrounding Lloyd's murder not only convicted Hernandez, but also eliminated a history of unchecked violence, missed interventions, and a life tearing on the edge. These crimes, once unveiled, showcased Hernandez as someone whose fame and fortune failed to insulate him from the demons that had haunted him since youth. Aaron Hernandez's life had been punctuated by acts of violence that were often overlooked or minimized, allowing him to continue a cycle of harm. These revelations surrounding his behavior highlighted missed opportunities for intervention, both during his youth and as a professional athlete. This was not merely a tragic case of a fallen sports star. It was an indictment of a system that valued talent over accountability, where red flags were ignored until it was far too late. Hernandez's trial was more than just a battle over his guilt or innocence. It was an examination of his complex psychological state, woven with narratives of trauma, fame, and mental health.
And what did you see when you looked at his brain?
He had a large brain, which is not uncommon for football players. The external surface looked perfectly normal. I mean, when I first saw it, I thought it looks good. There was no obvious damage. But then when we started doing the dissection, we slice through the brain coronally. I could see that his ventricles, the chambers inside of the brain, they were larger than they should have been, which means that there's brain shrinkage of the brain tissue. And then there was a membrane that divides the two halves of the brain. And instead of being like a curtain, it had giant holes in it. And that's a sign of brain trauma, because the fluid is banging against that curtain and ripping it and causing holes. And I'd never seen fenestrations in anyone under the age of 45. So that was shocking to me. And then I thought, when I saw that, he probably is gonna have CTE. And then when I looked under the microscope, his frontal lobe from the back to the front was really riddled with tau. It was almost as though he had a non-functioning frontal lobe.
The defense team sought to paint a portrait of a man who, although culpable for his actions, was significantly influenced by a lifetime of trauma and degenerative brain condition. They detailed Hernandez's turbulent upbringing, the loss of his father, and the relentless pressure he faced as an athlete, suggesting that these elements created a foundation ripe for mental instability. Central to the defense argument was the post-mortem diagnosis of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. Dr. Ann McKee, a renowned neuropathologist, performed an examination of Hernandez's brain and made a startling discovery. He had advanced stage 3 CTE, a condition rarely seen in individuals his age. McKee described the extent of the damage as severe, with significant degeneration in the frontal lobes, regions responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and judgment.
From the external surface, you can see no abnormalities. It looks like the most significant that this, for an individual who was only 27 at the time that he died, he had very advanced disease, and not only was it advanced microscopically, especially in the frontal lobes, which are very important for decision-making, judgment, and cognition. But we could see damage to the inner chambers of the brain, the septum, and this would be the first case we've ever seen of that kind of damage in such a young individual. We don't get as many specimens from this age group, and in this age group, he's clearly at the severe end of the spectrum. I think there is a concern that we're seeing accelerated disease in young athletes, whether or not that's because they're playing more aggressively or if they're starting at younger ages, we don't know. But we are seeing ravages of this disease, and certainly he's an example in a young person. I can say that this is substantial damage that undoubtedly took years to develop. This is not something that's developed acutely or just in the last several years. I imagine these changes have been evolving over maybe even as long as a decade.
This level of damage is unprecedented in someone of his age, McKee noted, emphasizing the link between CTE and behaviors such as aggression, paranoia, and impaired decision-making. Clinical psychologist Dr. Heather Benhouse elaborated on how Hernandez's mental state could have influenced his actions. Hernandez's behavior aligns with what we see in severe CTE cases, she stated. She explained that CTE does not excuse criminal acts. It can create a mental framework where rational thought is compromised.
Mental health and personality factors at work in this case. So I'll start with the personality factors first, using the 5-factor model. I remember this through the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So with openness, this seems pretty low. With Aaron, we see extremely low conscientiousness. Extroversion's a little unusual. We see high extroversion, but he seems to be low on the positive emotions facet. Kind of goes back and forth on this one. We see low agreeableness generally. Clearly, if he committed a murder, that's usually associated with low agreeableness. But other times he appears to be more mid-range on this trait, and in general we see high neuroticism.
The condition, compounded by untreated emotional trauma from childhood, likely exacerbated Hernandez's tendency towards impulsivity and aggression. The trial also shed light on Hernandez's struggles with paranoia and trust. Witnesses, including former teammates and friends, testified about his increasingly isolation and obsession with security. This was illustrated by his installation of multiple surveillance cameras at his home in his insistence on carrying firearms. These actions, though viewed as extreme at the time, were retrospectively seen as symptoms of his deteriorating mental health. Testimonies during the trial underscored the connection between his upbringing and later behaviors. His brother, Jonathan Hernandez, spoke about their childhood, recalling meted out by their father and the profound impact of his sudden death.
I think within our household it was extremely difficult to approach our mother and father with things that we were experiencing because of their narrow-mindedness and just, you know, their set ways, and it's almost like sometimes you back away from communicating because not only are you worried about how they're going to take something, but you're worried about the message that's going to come from their mouth and the tone and the way that it's directed at you, which can cause anyone to really keep things in and really question whether or not you feel safe presenting information that you're struggling to understand or overcome within yourself.
The defense argued that these early experiences left Aaron deeply scared, leading him to develop maladaptive coping mechanisms. Further evidence presented included Hernandez's pattern of impulsive violence, highlighted by previous altercations that had not reached the same level of notoriety as Lloyd's murder. The prosecution pointed out that while Hernandez may have suffered from CTE, his actions were premeditated. They cited the meticulous planning involved in Lloyd's murder, including the messages exchanged between the two men and Hernandez's attempt to destroy evidence, such as surveillance footage at his residence. One of the most compelling pieces of the trial was Hernandez's history of unaddressed mental health issues. While he had made brief attempts at counseling, these efforts were inconsistent and often abandoned. Friends and family described how Hernandez's outward confidence masked deep-seated insecurities and rage. A former teammate mentioned, "He always put on a front like nothing could touch him, but you could see the anger simmering beneath the surface." Throughout the trial, the jury heard from medical experts who discussed the link between head trauma and behavior changes. Dr. Robert Stern, a CTE researcher, explained how repeated head injuries sustained during Hernandez's football career, starting from his high school years, could have accelerated the disease. Stern's findings underscored an alarming frequency with which young athletes show signs of brain degeneration far earlier than expected.
A significant contributory factor to CTE is exposure to blunt force trauma of the head. So what happens is that over sometimes up to 40 years, you will now begin to manifest in a progressive manner seemingly innocuous symptoms as mild as constant headaches, very subtle changes in personality, very subtle but diminishing intelligence, and then mood disorders, chronic alcoholism, drug abuse.
Are we talking like gentle slaps to the head?
Violent slaps that would make your brain move forward and backward, sideways in your skull, causing shearing injury.
The defense's portrayal of Hernandez as a man at the mercy of his mental and physical condition challenged the injury to consider whether these factors could mitigate his culpability. While the prosecution emphasized that the calculated nature of Lloyd's murder and Hernandez's actions in the days following the crime, the defense's narrative resonated with those who saw the trial as a broader indictment of the toll contact sports can take on young athletes. The trial concluded with a conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd, but questions about responsibility and the intersection of trauma, CTE, and criminal behavior lingered. Hernandez's case became emblematic of a larger conversation surrounding player safety, mental health in sports, and the need for systematic change to prevent similar tragedies. Hernandez's trial was more than just a legal battle. It was an exploration into his physique. The defense team attempted to frame Hernandez as a product of his circumstances, a man whose actions were influenced by trauma and undiagnosed mental condition. They highlighted his volatile upbringing, untreated emotional wounds, and most notably severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy. Throughout the trial, expert witnesses discussed the overlap between Hernandez's behavior and the common symptoms of CTE, aggression, paranoia, and diminished impulse control. These insights offered an explanation for why someone with so much to lose could act in ways that seemed counterintuitive. The defense also delved into Hernandez's history of untreated mental health issues. The public response to Aaron Hernandez's conviction and subsequent death was complex, marked by shock, sadness, and debate. Initially, his conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd was seen as a fall from grace for once a celebrated athlete. The public sentiment ranged from viewing him as a villain to recognizing him as a tragic figure molded by trauma and high stakes of professional sports.
All right, 7-on-7, red area.
I remember one particular time, we're out there doing a walkthrough with Tom. Aaron's out there in flip-flops, going through the drills, laughing, flipping the ball around, calling Bill Belichick daddy. And oftentimes, that didn't elicit any response out of Bill.
I had a locker right next to him, tried to help him, tried talking to him, but at the same time, I don't know, I think it was pretty glaring that there were issues. I remember one time in practice, we're doing punt return, we're catching balls, and Aaron was sitting there, I'm the best returner on this team. Bill, why am I not back here? Da, da, da. Like, literally a rookie sitting there talking like this. And, Bill's, laughing. And, I'm like, why does he love this guy? I don't get it.
In the locker room, we get away with saying a lot of offensive and disturbing things.
The other ones do gangbang.
But
Hernandez's death by suicide in April 2017, only days after he was acquitted of a separate double homicide from 2012, added layers of complexity to his story. The timing was abrupt and left many unanswered questions. Found in his prison cell, the details of his death including haunting elements, a Bible verse written on his forehead, and 3 notes left behind, which fueled speculation about his final state of mind.
Now at 5, a stunning turn in the Aaron Hernandez saga. The former Florida Gator and Patriot star found dead in his prison cell.
It was a bit of a shocker for me.
Tonight, the questions and the investigation into this suicide shocker.
And by all accounts, Aaron Hernandez was not in the frame of mind to take his own life.
His attorneys, his agent, even jail officials said they had no reason to suspect something was up, and then he was found in his cell around 3 this morning. CBS 4's Elliot Rodriguez is here now with more on the investigation. Elliot.
Well, Rick and Rutabaga, the courtroom drama starring Aaron Hernandez is now over. Prison officials say Hernandez took his own life inside that prison cell. It comes less than a week after he was found not guilty of a double murder, but was still facing life in prison with no parole for another conviction.
His suicide occurring just hours after a joyful call to his fears, Cheyenne Jenkins, led to widespread discussion about whether his acquittal reignited hope, only for it to be dashed by the realization of his ongoing life sentence for Lloyd's murder. The aftermath of Hernandez's death brought renewed attention to the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, and its devastating effect. Dr. Ann McKee's postmortem analysis revealed that Hernandez had advanced stage 3 CTE, typically found in other outlets after decades of exposure to head trauma. This discovery shocked both medical experts and the public, sparking discussions about the role of repeated brain injuries in shaping behavior. The NFL faced increased scrutiny over its handling of player safety and its long-standing practice of downplaying the risks associated with concussions. Advocacy groups pushed for more comprehensive support for current and former players, emphasizing that urgent need for improved mental health resources is stricter protocols. The reaction from Hernandez's former teammates and the Patriots organization was varied. Many expressed shock and regret, acknowledging that they had noticed troubling signs but felt constrained by a culture that prioritized toughness and stoicism. One former teammate said, "There were moments when we saw flashes of something darker, but the game conditions you to look past it." The Patriots distanced themselves from Hernandez following his arrest, removing his records and images from their facilities. This act highlighted the tightrope that organizations walk when addressing scandals that tarnish their legacies. Public opinion was deeply divided. Advocates for brain health and sports reform viewed Hernandez's case as a critical wake-up call, urging comprehensive changes to how contact sports handled mental health and the long-term consequences of repeated injuries. They argued that while Hernandez was responsible for his actions, his story underscored how unresolved trauma and untreated CTE could amplify destructive behavior. Critics, however, maintained that Hernandez's choices were his own. They pointed out that many athletes faced similar physical and emotional challenges without resorting to violence. To them, the narrative surrounding his brain condition and upbringing was seen as an attempt to shift blame away from his personal decisions. This perspective emphasized that while CTE might have influenced his behavior, it did not absolve him of culpability. The broader public reaction also drew attention to the culture within the NFL and collegiate sports, where a playthrough pain mentally often discouraged players from acknowledging vulnerability or seeking help. This culture contributed to a system that missed numerous opportunities for intervention. Hernandez's actions, from altercations during his college years to the escalating violence leading to Lloyd's murder. The revelation of his severe CTE adds urgency to the conversations about safety protocols and support systems in contact sports. It raises pressing questions about how many more athletes might be slightly suffering, their actions shaped by unseen damage, and whether meaningful reforms will follow to protect their future generations.